And I decided that I couldn't hate him anymore, that actually hating him was killing me. Not everybody gets to do that. And not everybody may ever be in a place to do that. But I thank God that I had 6 years with my dad being the dad I always wanted.
Welcome to a new episode of Through the Eyes of Survivors. I'm Tara Woodlee, president of Break the Silence Against Domestic Violence. And this is a podcast that's dedicated to survivors and families who have lost a loved one to domestic violence, and talking about the issues that we feel are important for people to understand about domestic violence and the trauma that people experience and how we can heal and thrive in our journeys. So today I have a wonderful guest. She is a volunteer here at Break the Silence. Her name is Danyelle Bragewell, and she volunteers with us as part of our content team. So if you subscribe to some of our other social media channels, Facebook and things like that, you'll see some of what she's doing, especially TikTok. We're glad to have her there. And she also is a part of our social media engagement team. Danyelle, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. I really do appreciate it.
I've been looking forward to this. So do you want to give us just a little background on your story?
I'm going to be honest. My story is long, but just as a gist, the overview, my childhood abuse and trauma began while I was still in the womb. I was actually born with a birth defect. My father tried or threatened my mother while we were actually at the Ronald McDonald House at UAB Children's. Said I was defective and did not need to be allowed to live. So it carries on from there, from that type of violence to it gets better, it gets worse. But for the most part, drinking was the majority of my childhood that I can remember. Me and my mom always running here, running there, never really leaving. But everything changed when a very, very huge catastrophic event happened. My mom was diagnosed with cervical cancer, and in 9 months she was gone. I was 12 years old.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
It was 30 years this year. Actually, this is the 30-year anniversary, and it's crazy to think about the fact that I've lived longer than she ever got to. I have a real hard time with that.
I completely understand and get that. Yeah.
Which I guess none of it's fair when you get down to it, but there's a lot more extra than that. But the main things are, I wasn't even out of the womb yet. Like I like to compare it to people, how they tell you to, play classical music for your children, talk soothingly to your child while you're pregnant. Well, I'm sure my mom tried, but I was hearing screaming, profanity, things being thrown, so on and so forth.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think you can tell the difference as a mother experiencing it as well. For me, like my first daughter, the situation was we were living with his parents and I wasn't experiencing anything yet. So that pregnancy was fairly calm. And then the second pregnancy, we were hot and heavy into it. So there was a lot going on, a lot of screaming and yelling back and forth. And I have always wondered and noticed the difference between the first daughter and the second daughter, where the first daughter, Rachel, just wants peace, a lot of times. And Ashley was very loud and, wasn't objective. You didn't have any objections to, arguing and being, very with chaotic. And I feel like she was because used to the chaos. I think it started from the beginning in the womb. So you have a unique perspective on that because as an adult coming up into that. So like give me some little glimpses kind of into those family dynamics as you first growing up, because you said at first it was started at the hospital with him saying he really didn't feel like you needed to continue. I mean, that's got to be.
And he was, despite the fact of how he acted and some of the things that he was involved with, he was actually never in the military, but now my grandfather was. He was very, women do not speak unless they're spoken to. I was not allowed to make eye contact with him. If I cleaned my plate, I was punished because I was already too fat. When I was younger and I stayed at Children's, best as I can see from paperwork that I still have of my mother's, I was there roughly about 3 months. And when she brought me home, I was a fussy baby because of everything that was wrong with me.
And everything. I think the statistics are too that children who have the experiences of domestic violence trauma in the womb are more likely to have colic as well. So
that doesn't surprise me at all. But things got a little bit better. When I say that, I won't say necessarily better. My dad started traveling more for work, for his day job and for his extracurricular activities. So things were calm for me and my mom. I mean, she was my best friend. We did not have a mother-daughter dynamic. And when he did come home, I would like throw things at them while he was fighting with her to get his attention off of her and onto me, because I was a faster runner and I could get into closets and lock the door, but those kind of things. And then you would catch him on a rare day that he was completely sober and he would be braiding my hair. He would be, helping me pick out which clothes to wear. He was, we were going to spend the day together. Well, the funny part, well, it's not really funny. My mom sure didn't think it was funny. We went on a road trip to the bootlegger.
Oh, to the bootlegger. Oh, well, that's an interesting place for take your kids. Yeah.
The first place that me and my dad went to by ourselves was me in the car seat at Papa whoever's. I'm sure the gentleman is gone at this point, but I told my mom how the nice old man gave me a sucker, and she knew then, and she was so upset. That's probably one of the few times she actually raised her voice to my dad instead of the other way around. Also, as things escalated, it was year by year. Time starts going on, things get worse. It wasn't just alcohol, it was also drugs. It was, really, it was just a little bit of everything. And I'm not exactly sure what all I can and can't talk about on here. So I'll just.
You can go as far as you want to go. So absolutely.
He was a trafficker and he helped move a lot of things and did whatever the higher ups told him to do, however illegal, whatever. And as that escalated, so did his anger. I don't know if it was not wanting to be home or just seeing how unperfect we were. Everything just had to be perfect. And nobody can live up to that standard. And I can distinctly remember when the time came that I was no longer scared of my dad. Was not scared at all. Used to be terrified. He could look at me the right way, I would start squalling. Then it was just like I woke up one day and I was like, you know what? To hell with this. Not anymore. And what had changed was my mom getting sick.
Right.
And that's actually the first time me and my dad got physical. He did a lot to her. And his favorite punishment for me was I was forced to sit and watch him beat the hell out of her. And the entire time he's telling me that if I would have just done what I was told, this wouldn't be happening. If I had just not cleaned my plate, if I had just cleaned up my toys, he wouldn't be beating my mom in the face. Although eventually he avoided the face because, a lot of them usually do, eventually learn to not aim for where bruises are shown. And so that was his special way, I guess we can call it, of my punishment. But he was actually trying to steal some of my mom's pain medicine. Oh, and she was crying, of course. At this point, she was completely terminal. Every organ, all of her blood, everything, her bones is everywhere. And I'm washing dishes, and it's just like I heard it. And y'all, I don't know. He went to grab for her arm, and I just went black. Next thing I knew, I came to, and I had shoved him so hard that like the back of his head had snapped and there was blood running all down the wall. And he was just looking at me like his eyes were huge because he just couldn't believe that his little girl just put her hands on him. My mom was crying so hard, but I went just as cool, calm, and collected as I could be. And I had just turned 12, if I'm remembering correctly. And I'll be the first to tell you my short and long-term memory is not that great. But usually what I do remember is the bad stuff. I went and knelt down over him because he couldn't get up. He was too intoxicated. And I went nose to nose with him and told him that if he ever touched my mother again, I would show him that he wasn't the only motherfucker who knew how to pull a trigger. Because I had literally, my mom didn't realize I was doing this, but I had watched him for years take apart and put back together guns, take apart and put back together guns. Not that there's anything wrong if you believe in your Second Amendment right. Personally, I do. But his way of doing things was not how it was supposed to go.
Right. It was an intimidation type of technique that he was using.
Oh, exactly. And I mean, and what he didn't realize is just that every time he did that, he pissed me off a little bit more.
Right.
Because I was so tired of being the intimidated one for my mom having to take the beatings for me. And I was really just rolling the dice at that point. I was like, you know what? Hit me. I'll call the HR. I just didn't even care. You finally get to that point, I think. Everybody does. Mine was just a little bit younger, I guess, than most, but.
No, and I'll tell you something. I haven't talked about it much. There's very small circles that know this information even about me, but people do understand that my family has a history of it. But when my mother, when I was 13, remarried, she remarried a man who was extremely abusive, and he had a daughter that was my age in school. It had become common knowledge what happened with her because she tried to kill herself. And it was because he was molesting her. And my mother decided to start dating that man and then married him because she got pregnant by him. The abuse was starting to happen with my siblings, and him and I got physical a few times to where, like you're talking about, where I was daring him to hit me. Please hit me so I can call the police, so I can call Child Protective Services, do something. And, I'm not proud of this, but I was 13 at the time. I felt like none of the adults were hearing me because I tried to get my grandparents to pay attention, and they thought I was being just an emotional 13-year-old girl. But He had another daughter who was the same age as one of my sisters, about 7 years old, and I could see he was molesting that girl, and he was trying to groom my sister into that same. And there's my mother carrying his child, and I thought we would be so much better if I just take him out. And there were at least two different occasions in the middle of the night I stood over him with a knife in his sleep, and just looking at my pregnant mother made me not do it and walk away. But when you are in that as a young person, I think maybe this is an important story for me and you to be telling. When you see nothing else and that you have to protect your family and there's nobody there to protect you, where do you leave these young people in this dynamic? As a teenager, I felt so helpless in this whole situation. And I imagine you did as well.
I did. And I'm sure, I don't know what the difference in our ages are, but my grandparents, there's actually kind of another story with that. My mom passed when I was 12. I didn't actually move in with my grandparents till I was 14. I was a couch surfer from 12 to 14, staying the night with friends. Nobody in the town had any clue what was going on. Like, the people who knew how my dad was thought I was with my grandparents. The people who knew that my grandparents were so distraught and absolutely torn to pieces over my mother's death, they were, I guess you would call it a nervous breakdown, something to that extent. People who knew what was going on there just assumed I was with my dad. Well, I wasn't with either one. But providing their generation, and even then, it's just so much different than it is now. There was no me going to therapy. There was no me getting counseling and talking to somebody. No,
we don't do that. No.
No, we don't do that. We don't let other people know our business. We don't let the good family name. Give me a break. At this point, I'm like, good family name? You kidding me?
Yeah.
It just, not that everybody in my family is like that, but it's just, it was just comical to me. Like, are you being serious right now? But they were. They had absolutely no qualms about saying, no matter what's going on with you. And then, of course, as I got older, everything I held in, boy, did it come out.
Yeah, it eventually does, because things like that, you never forget those feelings of being pushed to a limit of, seeing the bruises on my 2-year-old baby brother and just thinking, no, I can't let this ever happen again, kind of thing. And he's trying to groom my 7-year-old sister, and he's abused the other sister who's like 9 or 10. He's put bruises on her, and you see nothing else. You see nothing else that you can do because nobody talks about it. You're not going to therapy. Nobody's listening to you.
Yeah.
And it's hard to be children in that kind of a position.
Yes. And my mom, she did try her best. And I know some people will criticize and say, well, if she had your best interest at heart, she would have left. Well, I'll be the first to say, when I say she was terrified and rightly so.
Right.
My dad was involved with very, very dangerous people, to the point that my life was threatened every time he got put in jail again. So, I know that she would have left if she could have, or believed that she had the strength. And the sad part of it is, after that altercation between me and my dad, I think that's what finally made it click in her head that, we had to get out because I was fixing to take care of it. She filed for divorce, or she had the papers drawn up, but she never actually got to file for divorce before she died. because she sat me down thinking that, I was going to be all distraught. And she was just, now, Danyelle, I just wanted you to know that I was thinking about maybe it just being me and you for a while. And I was like, are you serious? You're not kidding. And she was like, well, yeah. She was like, you're not upset, are you? I was like, upset. I was like, I've had a to-go bag packed underneath my bed for years.
Yeah.
I was like, I've been ready to run like ever since I thought you would say go. I mean, it just, yeah. She just had no clue.
No, they think they're doing the best for you. And they don't want to damage you any further. But sometimes what you're going through is more damaging than if you leave. Yeah.
Well, and I think what was told to my mom, and it makes me want to just strangle people for saying this and being that way. She's from a broken home. Home's already broken, folks. And the truth of it is, and I'm not saying anything totally against churches. I have my faith. My faith may be a little bit different than yours, but the church I grew up in drilled into your head, divorce equals fire and brimstone.
Right. Mm-hmm.
I mean, several things got you fire and brimstone, but divorce was one of them. And there's still so many different organizations that need to be educated on domestic violence in general and how to handle certain situations. We do not have family therapy with the abuser and the abused in the same room. You're not going to get right answers. I mean, because they're terrified. You're not going to get the truth.
No, well, if you come out with the full truth, nobody believes you.
Well, yeah, you're right.
Because it sounds too outlandish. And that's part of what's wrong with our court system. I was talking with someone on a previous podcast about that when you put out there the full truth, it tends to be used against you in a way where they just can't believe it. And so you have to be very strategic with the courts nowadays, because you put everything out there and then they want to act like you're making it up because it sounds too outlandish. But I'm here to tell you, I mean, that's what I say all the time. My life sounds like a Lifetime movie, several Lifetime movies. And but no, it's really my life. I'm not making this up. These are the things that really happened. It was hard. I have lived through some pretty horrific things, but it's my truth. And so many other people have that same truth, and we're like so silenced about it. It's unreal because of the judgment from church, from people, from court, from your own family, from your friends.
Oh, everything's all golden until you break everything out of the box and be like, look at this. And everybody's just like, just look, which I'll be honest with you, looks from people is how I finally figured out that my childhood wasn't normal, because I would start talking about, I don't know, anything from the fact that people couldn't spend the night with me if my dad was home, because my mom didn't want anybody to see him get drunk, puke on himself, puke in the floor, not make it to bed. When we wake up the next morning, she can't get him cleaned up fast enough. And all my little friends seeing him. I mean, that's just one instance. I mean, they just had no idea that I knew what different types of guns were. I knew what different types of alcohol was. I mean, like, there's just so many things, and they're just like, or you tell them something that, hey, this happened, at such and such time. I think I was about 9 or 10, and everybody's just looking at you like,
yeah,
like something's growing, like literally growing from your head. And I was so used to it. I had no idea there was anything wrong. until everyone was like, "Hey, Danyelle, there's something wrong."
Yes.
I mean, and it's not a laughing matter, but you almost have to laugh, not to cry, because the area I'm in is basically not the same county, but it's about the same area that my parents grew up in. And when my dad passed, he passed in 2010 from an OD, and I was 28. And some of his friends who literally had not seen him since high school were, I could just tell they were making comments. These people don't know. They literally have no idea who my dad became. They remember my dad like he was in high school, like they had just graduated. And it was so odd to me that, like, because I felt, well, actually, a couple of times we were on the front page, not me, but my dad made the front page. But, you know, and you got to roll with the punches with that too, which for the most part, everyone just felt sorry for me. There wasn't a whole lot of backlash or anybody making fun of me. I mean, like, I feel like I grew up in the right place, that they supported me. They didn't know what to do for me, but at the same time, I mean, you know, I wasn't catching any flack for things that my dad did.
Right. So what did he make front page for?
Oh, well, the one time that I remember exactly, because this is a good one. He assaulted 2 officers with a deadly weapon. That deadly weapon, literally everything on it was illegal. Everything from the ammo to the specs to the silencer that was also on it. They literally put him, from what I got told, in a straitjacket, or as much as they could get him in one, because he was just blind running. He was basically, I think he was having a manic episode. Now that I know what I know about my mental health and my dad's mental health, I believe that's what was going on. And they lock him up. I get the call from the police telling me what's happened. And I actually get asked to come down there to please to calm him down, because he's bashing his head into the side of the drunk tank and nobody could calm him.
Yeah.
So I drive down there. I'm either like 16 or 17 years old. I got school the next day. And I'm just like, Dad. And then finally, what got his attention is I called him Ricky. And as soon as I said his name, because he always used to tell me I said it just like my mama said it. And he turned around and looked at me, went white as a ghost, dropped to his knees, and started squalling. I got escorted out, and I was like, just keep him. I'll come back tomorrow. We'll talk about what needs to happen from here. I do. I come back the next day. He's not even in a holding cell. He's sober as a judge, as they say, sitting on a bench in between the 2 officers that he tried to kill, telling stories with them.
Right.
Just my dear old dad, just telling stories and sharing this and that and laughing and talking about things he did back in the 70s. And I'm like,
your dad had a certain charisma, didn't he, about him, didn't he?
And to beat all, I've heard it enough times, I can say it. He was a dang good looking man, and which he cheated on my mom so many times. I don't even know, begin to know the count. But I was just like, I mean, and it happened every time. If anybody could ever get him sober, and I know, and it's been preached to me, I know being an alcoholic and a drug addict does not make you an abuser. I know that. But there was something about the combination of that and whatever he had lurking in his brain, his own demons, all those things, it just made him so much worse. And as soon as that was gone and out of his system, he was like the dad I'd always wanted. Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde.
So what was it like? I mean, what happened exactly? I imagine your dad kept custody of you after your mom died. You went to live with him, correct? Or no? So that was interesting. What happened?
Well, the 2 years I did the couch surfing, I had several families that were very good to me. They had no, I mean, they let me spend the night for extended periods of time. And I basically had what I had in the bag. And Lord only knows I probably outstayed my welcome plenty of times, because here I am. Not only am I dealing with grief, am I dealing with trauma, I'm dealing with my dad. I'm going through puberty.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not a good combo. I'm assuming it wasn't a good combo. And at 14 is when my mom's parents, my nanny and my papa, Scott, took me in from 14 to 18.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, my dad, he would actually be honest with you and say, I don't know anything about raising a child. He said, you're actually better off with anybody but me. But kicker was, he wanted that Social Security check.
Yeah.
And nobody knew about even applying for a Social Security check on my grandparents' end, because they had never been through anything like that before. They didn't know I was supposed to be getting my mom's Social Security check. Well, as soon as they found out, they let Social Security know that my dad had been lying to the Social Security Administration since I was 12 years old, and I'm now 16.
Right.
Oh, that was a whole can of worms in and of itself. He threatened to kill me and my grandparents and everybody else all over the check, and also being sued for the back pay. Didn't help any. But on top of that, he had already said, hey, I know I'm not a good dad. But when I went back, I had stayed with a friend of mine for like a week after my mom's wake had been completed. And I went to actually change out my bag for the first time. And it was the last time I ever entered my mom and dad's house. Because I get there, I don't open the door or knock on the door. And my dad turns around just all jumpy. And I was like, hey, Dad. Like, hey, it's just me. I'm just, come to change out stuff in my bag. I'm going to just stay with a friend. And every single man in there, and I'm saying there was at least 20, all in militia gear, Kevlar, all decked out. Not all of them, but there were enough of them that looked at me in no way the way that you should look at a 12-year-old little girl.
Right.
I never went back because I knew that's what he was going to be hanging around with. Now, not that this gives an excuse, but I've basically looked like this since I was 12. I've been the same height since I was 12, same shoe size. So it did make me look older, but of course that's absolutely no reason for those men to have acted the way they did. So I literally shoved everything I could inside of 2 bags, and I barely even said bye. I just ran. And that's when the couch surfing began.
Yeah. I got to bless my grandparents for getting me out of that situation and helping to protect me, because I don't know what I would have done without mine during those years. It was pretty bad.
Well, my dad, despite what happens for many, I actually had the opportunity that I will say to forgive my dad as much as I possibly could. And even when I gave his eulogy, because I sang and gave his eulogy, I even told everyone there that, I should have forgiven my dad more, because I didn't know that he had a past of abuse. I didn't know that me and him actually share some of the mental health diagnosis that we do. It was just, I was learning things year by year. And when I finally, I'm like this, it's like I wake up and have an epiphany one morning and I just do something. And I decided that I couldn't hate him anymore, that actually hating him was killing me. Not everybody gets to do that. And not everybody may ever be in a place to do that. But I thank God that I had 6 years with my dad being the dad I always wanted. When he went to sleep at night, he held a picture of me and my mom and cried himself to sleep. His health got worse and worse and worse and worse. And actually found out that his OD was not on purpose by him, but on purpose by somebody else. It was a lot to take in. But at the same time, I felt like I didn't have to worry about him anymore. I didn't have to worry about who he was hanging around with.
Right.
I felt like he was at peace. Felt like he was with my mom. Even though no matter what he had done to me and my mom, I still always wanted to have a daddy. And I got lucky. I got, 6 years. That's better than nothing.
Right. Well, and I think people so much forget that we are half of that person as far as people go. And, whether it's good or bad, that person is connected forever to you through that biological link, but also, the things that happen during those times that it's different than a regular, like if you're in a relationship and you're going, but they love you, but they don't love you, but their parents have this way that you feel like if you hate that part of them, you're hating that part of yourself and that dynamic. And I remember, of course, every kid is like, I'm never going to be like my parent and stuff. And then, but as you get older, you have to come into that acceptance of, yeah, parts of me are exactly like that parent. But what I do with that is what's different.
Big time different.
And I think that's the key. Absolutely.
Well, because even the way that I look at my Second Amendment right is different than how he looked at it. Things that he taught me have actually saved my life because of how alert and observant I am of my surroundings. A lot of women are not gifted with that. I may be what some people call paranoid, or not necessarily paranoid. It's just I'm ready for anything.
People say hypervigilant. Yeah, that kind of thing. Yeah.
I'm sure I am what you would call hypervigilant.
Yeah, but in some ways that's good. I think, especially in today's society, it can be a benefit. It's like with anything, there's a benefit to some things, even though they can actually be bad in the end if you let it get that far. But there's always a balance when you strike a balance. Absolutely. So, Danyelle, if there was anything that you would want people to know, like from your story and from your trauma and now being older, looking back at it, what would you tell them?
I'm trying not to be cliche. Hug every chance you get. Not guaranteed tomorrow. Forgive every chance you get, because yet again, you're not promised tomorrow. Don't be so judgmental of yourself and others, because to this day, I'm 42. I'll be 43 this year. I'm still working on me.
Yes.
And I will probably never stop working on me, partly because of the complex PTSD and the borderline personality disorder, but also just because there's always something to learn. Never stop trying to learn more about how your brain and your body processes everything you've been through. It has so much to do with the choices that you make. So much to do with that. And I guess that's more than one, but there's so many times that, friends will be just writing off their parents at a drop of a hat, and sometimes it's not a drop of a hat. Sometimes it needs to be done because it's toxic. But, I see how some people act around me, and I'm just like, do you know what I would give? Absolutely everything in my body to have what you disregard as nothing. Absolutely. And not even be thankful. There's every family has their thing, but by and large, have a true normal family. There's not any addiction, there's not any abuse, anything like that, and they're not even thankful for it. And I'm just like, do you have a clue how good you have it?
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, that's what I love about podcasts like this too, because the truth of it is there's people out there more than just us as peers of having gone through trauma and abuse and things like that. There's people out there who've never had it in their life who need to hear this just as much as our peers do.
Yes.
Our peers need to know they're not alone, that they can talk about it, that it's perfectly okay to talk about it. And then there's the others that need to realize that we do need to talk about it. Don't judge us for talking about it. Because I do get, on my platforms, I get the occasional naysayer that's just like, God, will you just shut up about domestic violence or mental health or suicide prevention? Can you not just find something else to talk about?
Mm-hmm.
Oh no, buddy, how about unfollow my page? It's not going to affect me either way.
Oh no, I hear it too, and I've had a child. I've lost a child to it, and a grandchild, and people would give me the same thing. When are you gonna get over it? When are you gonna quit talking about it? When are you gonna? Never, never, because it's still happening. It's still happening to people. Now, I thank you, Danyelle, for coming on. I'd love to have you back and talk more. I have enjoyed it. So, absolutely. This concludes this episode of Through the Eyes of Survivors. Please be sure to check us out on our website, which is www.breakthesilencedv.org. Check out our TikTok. We have the TikTok. You can find it at BTSADV7. Check us out on that platform as well, and our other social media platforms. We're on pretty much all of them. And we'll see you next time. Thank you.
Bye, guys.